Josie and the Pussycats are really hot today.
We will return in a moment to Josie and the Pussycats.
All right, group. The minute we stop, everybody out and we'll make a break for it.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Josie and the Pussycats.
Man, dig that swinging sound.
On the 1970 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machine.
Keep a sharp lookout for that pigeon, Muttley.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machine. On the 1970 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Flintstones. On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Flintstones.
Uh-oh, here they come.
On the 1970 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We'll return in a moment to Where's Huddles
Get through, Huddles. Never stood a chance. It's brains over brawn every time.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Where's Huddles
Huddles is still going.
on the 1970 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
It's clobbering time.
We'll return in a moment to Fantastic Four
Must be destroyed. How many times have we heard that speech?
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Fantastic Four
It's clobbering time.
on the 1968 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Shazam
Thanks, Shazam.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Shazam
Well, 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 young masters.
on the 1968 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
And away they go.
We will return in a moment to Wacky Races
That sneaky shortcut put us way out in front. Right, Muttley?
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Wacky Races
Drat.
On the 1968 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
The banana split!
We will return in a moment to the Banana Splits
I want a volunteer to step forward.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Banana Splits
Let's get on with the club business.
on the 1968 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Funky Phantom on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Funky Phantom
I'll give him what for? What 5 even?
on the 1971 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
I got him! I got him!
We will return in a moment to Help! It's the Hair Bear Bunch
Herr Barris just come up with another brilliant idea.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Help! It's the Hair Bear Bunch
Here, you're all brains.
on the 1971 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Hold on, you! It's ready to the rescue!
You're watching the 1963 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Rough and Ready Show
Are we a dog and a cat? Of course we are.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Rough and Ready Show
Dangerous? Now he tells us.
on the 1963 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Dad, Reese, over here!
We will return in a moment to the adventures of Johnny Quest
We gotta do something, Hodge. They've got Dad and Reese.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Quest
Jolly good show, Master Hodgie. Thank you very much, Johnny.
on the 1971 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Top Cat on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Top Cat
The meeting will now start with the calling of the roll.
on the 1963 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Howdy do, folks.
We will return in a moment moment to the Huckleberry Hound Show. On Boomerang. From Cartoon Network, welcome back to the Huckleberry Hound Show. On the 1963 edition of Boomerang. From Cartoon Network.
Hi there, Boo-Boo. Little bear-type buddy.
We will return in a moment to the Yogi Bear Show.
I just gotta get some food in my shrunken stomach.
On Boomerang. From Cartoon Network, welcome back to the Yogi Bear Show.
Look, Boo, they're ready to put on a show.
On the 1963 edition of Boomerang. From Cartoon Network.
Yabba dabba doozy!
We will return in a moment to Pebbles and Bam Bam.
Bam Bam, just leave everything to me.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Back to Pebbles and Bam Bam.
I hate to say I told you so.
On the 1971 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Nobody fools around with Frankenstein Jr.
We will return in a moment to Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossible.
The Impossibles are ready to do the impossible, Chief.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossible.
Junior, you did it again.
On the 1966 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Roadrunner Show. Beep, beep. On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Beep, beep. Welcome back to the Roadrunner Show. On the 1966 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Peter Potamus Show.
Now we really must shove off. Come on, So-So.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Peter Potamus Show.
Let's go for a spin.
And on!
On the 1966 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Space Ghost.
We will return in a moment to Space Ghost.
Jason's in trouble on Jupiter.
I'll pick you up in 3 minutes.
On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Space Ghost.
Boy, are we glad to see you.
On the 1966 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. a moment to Yogi's
We
Gang
messed it up, and we can clean it up.
Let's do it.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Yogi's Gang
Last one there is a hungry bear.
on the 1973 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids reporting, sir.
We will return in a moment to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids
Faster, Wally.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids
Sundance 1 reporting in, Mr. Socrates.
from the 1973 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
That's me.
We will return in a moment to Speed Buggy on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Speed Buggy on the 1973 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
The master detective who never slips up.
We will return in a moment to Inch High, Private Eye
Sure. The butler did it. How corny can you get?
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Inch High, Private Eye
I wouldn't leave here if I were you.
on the 1973 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Hong Kong Phooey
I don't know what I'm saying, but it sure sounds good.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Hong Kong Phooey
It's so nice to be recognized and loved.
on the 1974 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Valley of the
I
Dinosaurs
think we spotted a trail out of here.
Wow, fantastic, Dad.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Valley of the Dinosaurs
I'm not scared of that noisy lizard.
on the 1974 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
I'll get you, Penelope Pit Stop. We will return in a moment to the perils of Penelope Pitstop Farewell forever, Penelope Pit Stop.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the perils of Penelope Pitstop
What a pickle to be in.
on the 1969 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
There they are, Doc.
We will return in a moment to the Herculoids
I'll call Sandor.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Herculoids.
It sounds like trouble. Faster, Zoc.
On the 1969 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
I am the roughest, the toughest white shark ever.
We will return in a moment to Jabberjaw
Wowie, wow, wow, wow. That's my Jabber. He's a hero.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Jabberjaw
Here's for me.
on the 1976 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Great Grape Ape Show
I know. I'm sorry.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Great Grape Ape Show
Grape. Yep, that's me.
on the 1975 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch
I'm gonna stop that wheelie if it's the last thing I do.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch on the 1975 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Devlin on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Devlin on the 1975 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
What's going on?
We better find out.
We will return in a moment to the new Scooby-Doo movie
For the first time in a lifetime career of overeating, I think I'm getting a bellyache.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the new Scooby-Doo movie
I'm getting more confused every minute.
on the 1974 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the new Scooby-Doo movie
The amazing Shaggy, part man, part chicken.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Back to the new Scooby-Doo movie
Well, study show I'm for that. Let's go.
on the 1974 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to the Bugs Bunny Show
Knock on you, old mean wabbit.
on Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to the Bugs Bunny Show
What's up, Doc?
on the 1967 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
I'll put a stop to that.
return in a moment to Birdman and the Galaxy Trio. On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Birdman and the Galaxy Trio.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go!
On the 1967 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network. We will return in a moment to Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor. On Boomerang from Cartoon Network. Welcome back to Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor. On the 1967 edition of Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Warning swimmers, we've got some potential violence, some strong language coming up, and some adult situations. No kids in the pool. All kids under 17 out for Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out. Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
Okay, everybody ready?
Ready?
Jason, ready?
Hey, I'm ready.
Okay.
Kind of. I'm a little tired.
All right, no tea parties. No tea parties. Somebody's gonna get hurt. Come on, grow up.
Dr. Quist, tell us a little about your relationship.
Well, Race and I met one night.
With your boys.
Right.
Harvey Birdman, attorney at law. Tonight at 11 on Adult Swim. The Rack Show next. The Rack Show next.
I hide for you, baby. I'm a big old beat. I'm red but not embarrassed. And I am good with meat. And I'm hard for you, baby.
The Rack Show next on Adult Swim.
Gotham City is a wasteland. Deep in its valleys of iron and steel, supervillains wreak havoc.
Who's up for some laughs?
The only hope for the future is the new Batman on the block.
Let's go.
Batman Beyond, starting Monday, October 1st at 6:30. Justice returns to Gotham. Only Toonami. You know their names. Now see the show that started it all. Earth's mightiest warriors. Only smaller. Dragon Ball. Weekdays at 5:30.
Master Roshi, get off the toilet.
I said hold on.
You're stinky.
They're so cute at that age. Only Toonami.
Almost there. Reach for it, ladies. No peeking, Betty. Reach for it, ladies. The Rack Show next. The Rack Show next.
That shockwave created a subspace fracture. Take that, subspace. Shut up. No. The damage to subspace has caused a temporal distortion. We've gone back in time.
C-Lab 2021, tonight at 11:15 on Adult Swim. Marco! Sounds fancy, I guess. Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, next. Adult swim. Adults. Adult swim. Adult swim.
Kick back. Kick back. Okay, pull in. Betty, hook up. Betty. Foot to neck. Look where you are. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Straight legs. Skull. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Skull. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
C-Lab 2021 next. Next.
Nice tune, real easy.
Cowboy Bebop, tonight at 12 on Adult Swim.
Recycling. Working. It's your birthday.
Space Ghost Coast to Coast next. Coming up next.
Universal Century 0079. The one-year war rages on. Space Noids against Earth dwellers.
I'm gonna drive the Xeon forces right off the Earth.
Zeke against Fetty.
Not bad for a Betty, but I bet you're not ready for this.
As both sides prepare for the final battle.
Run for it!
The secret love of two enemies may be mankind's only hope for peace.
Feeling as you do you believe you can still fire at the enemy?
We're no better than they are. Gundam, 8th MS Team, starting Monday up at 5.
You wanted a fight? Well, here it is!
Dig in. Only Tsunami.
Almost there. Reach for it, ladies. No peeking, Betty. Reach for it, ladies. Space Ghost Coast to Coast next. Coming up next. Cowboy Bebop at 12 a.m. tonight. Cowboy Bebop. Attention swimmers. We've got some new shows coming. That's right, new shows. But there's no kids under 17 allowed. So that's new too. Adult Swim. Sunday at 10 on Cartoon Network.
Marco.
5, 6. This way. Turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get right across the street. You're out, Chris.
This Today's word. Everywhere.
Big Shack.
Inuyasha.
This man's life has lost its zest. For him, the kick's gone out of living.
Hugh, telephone.
All right.
Hello.
Hugh, boy. This is Ralph Collier. Listen, boys, this is big.
Now, I wouldn't do a thing like this to anybody I liked. But a guy like you, well, who cares? So here's the deal.
Hey, Dad, you know that place down by the creek?
Hush, Kenny. That call, what does Ralph want?
Oh, he has some kind of a harebrained scheme up his sleeve. He'll be by tonight.
Oh, Hugh. Ralph always manages to get you all upset.
Bored stiff, you mean?
And that's another thing.
I've made an appointment. 1:30. Dr. Bogart. Why, though, I'll never know.
Because it just isn't natural the way you've been dragging around this way. After all, everybody should have something to be interested in.
Doesn't bother me any.
Well, it does me. I think there's something wrong with your thyroid or something. Like Fred.
Well, that's the story on Hugh. No interest at home or at the office either. Even when his boss leans on him, he rolls with the punch. Why get in a sweat over a lot of busy work? Same way with friends. Don Finney likes to talk hobbies. Hugh couldn't care less. His appointment with Dr. Bogart gives him a good excuse to leave. Physically, Hugh's okay, the doctor reports. No thyroid deficiency to slow him down. But has he been shortchanging himself on sleep? Is he depressed about anything? Has trouble developed at work or at home? The answer's no. The verdict? Boredom. Dr. Bogart's advice is for Hugh to find some all-consuming interest in life. What kind of nonsense is that? Hugh flat can't do it. Hugh's condition may be serious. He'd better check with Dr. Jeffers over in the medical center. Not a psychiatrist. Yes, a psychiatrist. Boredom's an emotional state. Out of hand, it calls for specialized treatment. Well, maybe only, well, why make a federal case out of it? After all, what difference does it make if a man's bored? What harm can it do? Ed Vance, Hugh's boss, could answer those questions. For instance, he'd like to put Hugh in charge of the new branch office. But a job like that calls for enthusiasm and drive. Ed's afraid that Hugh just wouldn't spark the team. The Country Club Executive Committee. Hugh's nominated, but Don Finney says no. That committee job's not the place for a wet blanket. At home, too, Hugh's boredom exacts a price. In terms of his relations with Loretta, for example. By nature, Loretta's an enthusiastic person. But no enthusiasm can hold up long under Hugh's boredom. It's happened so many times. It all creates conflict in Loretta. Sometimes, subconsciously, she strikes out. But mostly, she herself loses interest and enthusiasm. It's as if Hugh's boredom were contagious, as if Loretta had somehow contracted it, like a virus. And for Kenny, the situation's even worse. Hugh has no time for the boy's enthusiasm. How long will Kenny be able to stay interested himself? Already the contagion of boredom is affecting his schoolwork. Disciplinary problems are beginning to develop also, problems that tie in closely with Kenny's boredom. Presents don't help. Neither does punishment. Ken's grades keep going down. What to do about it? What not to do comes easier. It's like with Ann Galloway down the block. She's bored, so she drinks. More and more and more she drinks. Sam Haglin across the street has a private remedy for boredom, too. He makes friends with every $10 tramp who comes along. Young Link Nagel down at the filling station gets his kicks racing the cops. Trouble is, that kind of business can get you into some pretty messy situations. And more important, it doesn't really solve the problem of boredom at all. You forget your frustrations for a moment, sure, but there's no real satisfaction. Excitement gets to be like Ann Galloway's whiskey. The kick wears off. Why do bored people do such things? Ann claims it's the monotony of housework that gets her down. She dealt satisfactorily with monotony when she had a job, though, back before she was married. Actually, her real trouble isn't monotony. It's that she grew up feeling that being a woman, a housewife, is an empty, meaningless, thankless task. Her job, on the other hand, was exciting and meaningful. But Ann's husband won't hear of her working now. The result? Inner conflict for Ann. Conflict between the demands of marriage and her personal hunger for a feeling of self-worth. Her boredom, her drinking, they're the symptoms of that conflict. Sam Haglin claims his trouble is his wife's stupidity. It bores him to distraction. But really, though, his big problem is Woodhall's, his competition across the street. So again, the issue's conflict. Reality versus Sam's picture of himself as worthy of success. But it's a conflict that Sam can't bring himself to acknowledge. The end result, boredom. But it's boredom for which he's found a remedy of sorts. A boost for his ego in a pattern of behavior that dates clear back to his teens. Sam couldn't compete then either. But there generally seemed to be some girl around to take the sting out of defeat. Link Nagel, he breaks the monotony of slum life by shooting craps. Though he doesn't know it, the roots of his boredom lie deep in hatred of authority. And yet self-preservation demands that he hold his rage under control. Hence, conflict, hence, boredom. Where does Hugh fit into this conflict-boredom sequence? How did he develop his present pattern? The answer to those questions goes back a lot of years. When Hugh was a baby, he acted spontaneously, did just what he felt like without restriction. And then his mother began to interfere with input and outgo, telling him when to go to sleep, when to wake up, enraging him, soothing him. He learned that sidewalks are hard, stoves are hot, and even little girls can bite. Cleanliness became a virtue, so did green beans, and obedience to orders. He learned that his mother could be shocked. And by the time he reached school age, he stammered just a little. Other kids laughed. He tried to pretend that he didn't care. He worked harder and harder in school so that he could show them that he was just as good as they were. Arithmetic seemed to come easiest for him. Later, algebra was a cinch. In geometry, he got straight A's. Not that that helped much on the dance floor. Mostly, he still spent his spare time alone. Hugh's father was his best friend. He taught him all about tools, about machinery, about hunting, about people, especially that people with white shirts have money and people with blue shirts don't. Hugh's father hated the white shirts' prosperity. They'd created nothing, and yet workers still couldn't meet their bills. To Hugh's mother, the creation part didn't matter. To her, it was money that was important. Hugh could see her side when the time came to meet his father's funeral expenses. The loneliness was even worse. But Hugh went on, though, through college, then into engineering. It was a good life out in the field, working and building the way his dad had always said he should. And then he met a girl, the girl. Only it turned out that Loretta didn't like the kind of life a construction tramp leads. When Hugh got the chance for an office job, he grabbed it. But then Loretta began to object to other things. She didn't like Hugh's friends. She didn't like his crudities, his fussing with mechanical gadgets. If Hugh put up a fight, well, there were always those headaches she had. Always seemed to come at bedtime. Not that Hugh struggled very hard. His mother had trained him too well for that. The higher Hugh rises in the firm, the more he rebels, subconsciously, against the white-shirted public relations frame of mind demanded of him. And yet his family and his financial problems tie him closer and closer to his job. It's a conflict situation. Instead of acknowledging how he feels, he hides his anger behind a bland mask of false cordiality, public relations. The people that Loretta forces him to meet socially are dull and boring. He's cut off from the field projects he loves. In the cause of clean hands, Loretta has ruled his workshop out of bounds. His relationships with Loretta have deteriorated badly. Night after night, it's the same. Too torn by internal conflict to fight, he sees himself through the eyes of his mother and Loretta. Instead of looking to his own desires, he takes it for granted his main goal in life should be to meet standards set by his wife. With mounting tension comes boredom, a symptom of that conflict between the life that Hugh leads and his basic emotional needs. In effect, boredom says, I want to do something, but I don't even dare admit it. So instead of bringing it out into the open, I'll let my attention wander. I'll develop what looks like fatigue, supreme disinterest in what I'm supposed to do. In Hugh's case, the situation has been getting worse for years. And by now, it's dubious that he can deal with it effectively without outside help. What might he do about it? Well, he could find at least part of the answer right out in his own backyard, watching son Kenny. Ken's eager to build a tool shed, but sometimes he gets tired of it. Football offers a change of pace. Swimming, too. Bike riding. In other words, there's variety in Ken's interests, and change itself is a remedy for mild degrees of boredom, as well as a universal human need. If you do enough different things, there will be little chance to grow bored with any one of them. Ed Vance is another one who could teach Hugh ways to deal with boredom, because Ed's so taken up with striving to outdo the competition that he's hardly aware of all the busy work he has to handle. His drive to win shapes his whole way of living. He makes no pretense that it doesn't. Whether he's hiring a rival's key man, or or just playing poker at home on Saturday night. To fight boredom, then, each of us needs to take a cold, clear look at the rules he lives by. For only thus can we resolve our conflicts. We must face our drives with utter honesty, release our tensions, satisfy our inner needs. A case in point, Don Finney has a need to dominate. But people who needle you can't always be controlled. Don knows that, too. So he takes out his frustrations on wood. Something that he can shape at will. Something that can't fight back. But a man's patterns are already formed. The best place to stop boredom is back in childhood, before it even starts. Interest is such a fragile thing. It dies so easily. Hugh senses that sometimes, like today. That nail that Ken bent, it brought back so many things. The day so long ago when Hugh's father showed him how to use a block to pull a nail. We help ourselves by helping others, even more when we help our children. If Hugh realized that fact emotionally, his boredom could die right here in this backyard with Kenny. But the moment passed. Hugh's pattern of conflict and of boredom was too rigid, too strong for him to break. Another crisis came that night when Ralph Collier followed up his morning phone call.
Well, there it is, boy. Biggest contract our outfit's ever landed.
Well, where do I fit in?
Are you kidding? A job like this requires a real field man. Well, I came to the best I know.
Ralph, do you mean you'd put me in charge of this whole job?
What else?
Boy, for 2 cents I'd do it, Ralph. This is a project, fella.
Hugh, please. You're not a child anymore. You have a family to think about.
She's right, Ralph.
You, boy, you don't know what you're saying. Why, this is the greatest challenge you've ever been offered.
No go, Ralph. No go.
Are you really serious?
Serious, Ralph.
Just chalk it up to my window. Don't bother you. I'll let myself out.
Ralph, perhaps we could discuss this.
Sorry, I wasted your time.
Oh, Hugh, I'm so glad you didn't let him talk you into that awful job. I mean, being left here all the time with Kenny. Oh, dear, there are lots worse things than being a little bored.
Sure, honey, sure.
The day is ended, a day to plunge Hugh even deeper into boredom. And yet there still is hope for him, for out of the day's events, a dim awareness is growing in him, a vague realization that perhaps the road he's on isn't quite the one he wants to travel. Though alone, he's no longer capable of decisive action. He still can win if he'll get proper help. All it demands of him is the first step. Can he bring himself to seek that help? Does he have the strength and the courage to break down the walls of fear that pen him in? Or is it too late? So late that he'll live out his years in futility and frustration. Another good man fallen prey to the creeping paralysis of boredom, tasting for himself the bitter gall of conflicts unresolved, potential unfulfilled. It depends on him alone. Unless he finds help soon, not just this day, but life itself is ended for him. Ended in another bleak, needless tragedy of boredom at work.